Hi everyone, my name is Eran Kinsbruner and I welcome you to another Tech Talk. And today I'm going to focus on testing progressive web applications, or in a short way, PWAs. I'm an author and chief evangelist at Perfecto, which is a Perforce company. And before I get started with defining what is a progressive web application, let's just start with kind of setting the stage to why progressive applications are becoming more and more popular and a choice for many IT organizations. And I will give during the session some examples to many famous brands across different verticals that already adopted the PWA technology as their main digital channel towards their end users. So today, if you think about developing mobile native or hybrid applications, you would need separate teams for each and every application type. For example, for Android, you will need developers that are strong with or strong in Java. For iOS, you will need Swift or Objective-C developers, depending on the iOS version. So just from a development standpoint, you need separate resources, sometimes even separate teams, to just develop the technology. And if you actually have a separate website, you actually need also JavaScript developers. So that's the development phase. And by the way, the testing also requires often different frameworks for web, for mobile, for hybrid across the different platforms. In addition, when you do any changes, add capabilities, want to support a new platform, and you want to release or push to production a new version of the native or hybrid application, you must go through the process of deploying through Apple App Store or Google Play. And this also results in delays in your schedule, and you're simply dependent on a third party. When you're thinking about a web application, standalone web application, which can be, let's say, responsive, that runs both on mobile and web, you can change anything on your website, backend or frontend, and just push live to production without relying on any application store developers. And by the way, the web application usually are JavaScript based or PHP, and this is again a unique skill set. You do not need multiple developers in different languages to develop a single web application. Now that we just explained a very specific pain of developing and deploying existing native and hybrid mobile application, let's just focus on what is a progressive web. Progressive web application, it's a web application in a very high level way that simply inherits mobile specific capabilities. Okay, mobile specific capabilities, and I will dive deeper into what these are, enables the website to be very, very rich in its functionality, but also support things such as lack of or no connectivity at all through things like offline caching. In addition, mobile, if you are familiar with standard native mobile application, supports things such as push notifications, engaging with source, with sensors such as audio, microphone, location, and many more. So think about all of these capabilities that I mentioned that are mobile specific being added into a web application. This simply adds huge value, rich capabilities, good user experience with and without network connectivity, and many more. If you look at the Guardian screenshot in this slide, you can see that a user, when he was consuming data from this website, which is obviously progressive, was losing the connectivity to the internet. You see, unable to connect to the internet, but the progressive web as an offline caching technology allowed the user, while he's offline, to still engage with the brand through maybe getting a crossword, and just do it or play with it up until he's back online. eBay.com is also a progressive website. So you can think about a purchasing journey from the moment you decided to look into a specific product. And if you get disconnected, what eBay will do for you will save the session up until you got disconnected. And once you're back online, you can continue the purchasing journey regardless of losing the internet connection. So you do not need to go through the entire process all over again. Progressive web applications are also already quite advanced, so they are supported across both iOS and Android, which means Safari, Chrome, and also Edge and Firefox. So most of the leading browsers already come with support for progressive web implementations, and I will soon talk about the architecture of these applications and how they differ between iOS, Android, and basically also native mobile applications. So the main benefits of a progressive web are being summarized in this slide. Progressive means that, like any responsive website, it works for every user because it's simply a web application. So with whatever device or desktop that you have, you can still access this progressive web. It's a web application. It's obviously responsive. It's a superset of a responsive website, which means it fits any form factor. As mentioned earlier, it's connectivity independent, so it supports offline caching, so you can continue working and engaging with the website up until a certain level, even if you lost the connection, because the mechanism through service workers, which I will explain soon what they are, enables you to proceed working with the website up until the level that you got disconnected. Since it connects to the mobile operating system, you can actually get an application-like feeling, such as push notifications, working with sensors such as camera and microphones, location, and many more. It's a safe application like any responsive website, and it's running under HTTPS. It's part of Google's recommendation for PWA. Google were the first to implement the technology behind progressive. Then Apple caught up with that and supported it through their Safari. Obviously, when you implement a website as a progressive, you actually gain more points in the SEO engines, which means that you are able to maybe even increase your brand, I would say, awareness as well as business. You can read more about progressive web in medium.com or other of my blogs. But basically, in one of the recent researches that were published on progressive web, people mentioned these three main features as the main benefits behind progressive web. So the ability to get push notifications through the web application, working offline through the offline caching, and the ability to link a website like an application on the native OS of a mobile device, iOS and Android, were top of mind for the ones that adopted progressive web technologies. So how do you build a progressive web application? So progressive web application is built up on top of any website that you have, but consists of two main ingredients or components. The first one is the manifest, which is kind of a text file, a JSON file, which profiles the entire website. It gives you the name, the link, and the landing homepage, if you like, of the website when you create it as an installable app on your mobile device. Service Worker is actually the most important implementation behind a progressive website. That's the brains behind the website, and this allows you to implement all the push notifications, the offline caching strategy, working with sensors, accessing all the OS specific abilities like the contact list, the storage, and many more. So if you want to bring your website from responsive towards progressive, these are the two components that you would need to ask your developers to implement for you. And there are actually some nice build-it-yourself websites today that can get your website URL and create for you as a service a baseline manifest and service worker in JavaScript that you can start using, just build more specific to your brand after that. So you can actually ramp up quite fast with building your progressive web out of your existing web through built-in website and solutions out there. The installation, if you want to get started today with experiencing the benefits of a progressive web, is simply from an Android perspective as well as Apple. You simply go to the website, think about Instagram or Twitter.com. You go to the menu from the website, Safari or Chrome, and click Add to Home Screen. This will install a subset of the website application on your mobile device. Okay, you will see a new icon called Twitter Lite, voice memos, or whatever that are now behaving like a native application, even though they were originated from a website. Okay, they didn't underwent through any of the App Store or Google Play, and they were just installed on your mobile device, ready to launch upon your button click, finger click. As mentioned, Twitter is already a progressive web. So if you go from your desktop today, Windows desktop or others, you will see on the search bar of twitter.com in your browser a button that allows you to click on open with, and this will look as in this slide. You will actually get a detached twitter.com application on your desktop. I'm not even talking on mobile right now, on desktop, that you can start engaging outside of the browser. Okay, so it's already there. Twitter is just one example. If you want more examples, go to pwastats.com. There are plenty of more examples, including some benefits to the business from transitioning the websites from responsive to progressive. You can see here the Best Western River North Hotel seen almost 300% increase in revenue with new progressive web applications, and there are many more, Trivago and Uber, all familiar brands that expanded their business success through switching from responsive to progressive. And it's not just brand awareness and business, it's also from a technology standpoint, also a user experience boost outside of the push notification, the offline caching, and many other benefits that I already mentioned. Look at the different size of Tinder when it's comparing the native application size, which was 30 megabytes, to almost less than 3 megabytes size of a progressive web implementation with exactly the same functionality. Okay, so this is an additional benefit, and this can obviously improve the performance and the upgrades to the app from an end user perspective. If you ask yourself, well, I haven't kind of seen or tracked the progressive web application evolution, so this is taken from a quite recent, I would say, stat website that shows that almost all of the major latest browser versions supports service workers, obviously the manifest as well. So there is no excuse for it to say the technology does not enable me to switch to progressive, because all of the mobile browsers and desktop browsers, look at these versions, are fully supported, which means 94% of the entire web browsers already supports the implementation of JavaScript service workers and manifests towards transitioning your websites towards a PWA. As mentioned earlier, you can use PWA builders URL. This is one example, but there are many others. You can search on Google for PWA builders. You'll get a bunch of additional ones. Microsoft also provides you a service of building a PWA website from an existing one. In this example here, I just took CNN.com, which was not progressive, and I click on build my PWA. Obviously, as a developer, I have access to all of the sources behind that, and I can do much more. I was just trying to emphasize that it's really not that hard to do or to progress your website forward, and this can create for you a manifest file as well as a service worker. So let's now focus, after this intro, on how to test progressive web applications. Again, progressive is a superset of responsive, so whatever you are doing today with responsive website needs to remain as is in place, but you do want to add additional considerations on top of what you're already doing today, because you're adding a subset of or I'd say a superset of capabilities that needs to be tested on mobile and web applications or platforms. Before getting started, you do want to know these roadblocks. PWA is young. It's young comparing to the website. It's already 2 years being developed. You have seen the different browsers that are already supporting, but it's still growing mostly from compatibility with mobile operating system sensor support like voice, audio, AR, VR, and many others, things that are not always working as expected on a web application while working much better on a native mobile application. The architecture is also, it's not just a simple responsive web. You want to have your developers understand the logic behind working with service workers, how to manage events, states, caching, push notifications, and stuff like that across the different platforms. You need to have your developer catch up with this technology. Okay. The caching, obviously, as a standalone, is considered to be a very sophisticated thing to manage from a development standpoint, especially because of the differences between iOS and Android. Android is a bit more free, if you like, from a caching perspective. iOS quite limits the caching on an iOS device towards something like 50 megabytes. Android will give you up until 50% of your remaining storage, which is a huge advantage. There aren't that many open source and third-party integrations working with progressive web. It's growing, but it's not yet perfect. So you do want to take this into account when building the PWA. And just another roadblock, as you are building a website like any other, things are changing constantly, both on the website platforms and on the mobile. So you want to make sure that you are keeping up with the market as well, so you're not causing any regression as a new smartphone, tablet, operating system is being introduced. So to get started, my recommendation, even before writing your first line of code for testing, is leverage what's already out there. Look at the Google Lighthouse and PWA checklist, and they have 11 out of 14 baseline testing that they recommend you to do. They actually provide it to you through the Lighthouse audit. So a lot of these things are already automated for you from the Lighthouse technology. But you want to look at the performance, the customizing of offline pages, the installation of the link on mobile devices, the compliance across multiple browsers, having the responsiveness to any screen size and resolution. And then you want to make sure that you are providing an offline good experience. Also, you want to make sure that it's fully accessible, compliant with WCAG, because that's another website like any other technology. In addition, you want to make sure that you are providing context for permission requests. So this is also, from a security standpoint, is a requirement that Google mandates and also allows you to validate through the Google checklist. In addition, you want to have the PWA work with any input type and follow the general best practices for healthy written code. You want to learn more, you can actually go to this source and start working based on Google's recommendation. In addition, you have the generic, as mentioned, responsive website. So if you are doing testing for your responsive website today, these are the 6 building blocks that you want to consider, right? The test coverage, the visual website across multiple platforms, screen sizes, and resolution, client-side performance testing, accessibility, functionality across all the different screens and flows, and the responsive website should work across all different environment conditions, networks, locations, languages, and stuff like that. So this is the baseline for a PWA website, which is the responsive web. Nothing changes here. In addition, you want to add these top 6 considerations to your responsive web, which are specific to PWA. And these are testing for the manifest validity, testing the service workers. I will give you a few examples in the upcoming slides. Validation of the PWA specific capabilities on a mobile device. Again, I will give you a few examples pretty soon. The compatibility of your progressive website like responsive across multiple platforms. As mentioned, the storage, for example, differs between iOS and Android. So this is a unique limitation or difference between iOS and Android as it relates to PWA. You want to make sure that you are covering enough mobile devices and permutations when you're testing this PWA. The test automation also is quite unique because the initiation of the platform of the application on mobile devices starts from the web. Okay, you are creating a link, a shortcut from a web application, and only then you start working within the mobile PWA application. So this is a bit tricky. I will talk a bit more about it in just a few seconds. And of course, follow the Google PWA checklist, the 11 out of 14. There are actually 14 steps, but at least focus on the baseline, which are the top 11 considerations. You will be in a good place. So as promised, when you're thinking about PWA service workers, you can actually launch your website, your PWA website, and once you're doing that, you can use these built-in Chrome tools. They're also embedded in Edge, especially when Edge implemented Chromium, and just launch or register your service worker through these tools to see that they are working properly. In addition, you can stop and activate the service worker and see how it works, both from a push notification and offline caching perspective. If you are familiar with the F12 tools, the Google Chrome F12 tools, you will see an application new tab that is all focused on PWA. From there, you can actually see the manifest JSON file, you can see the service worker, you can start it, change it, and do some other stuff. So this is how you can look at the service worker, from a white box perspective. From a black box perspective, you want to make sure that on the mobile front, you are getting still from a Twitter PWA or an Instagram PWA, you are getting all the notification. You are disconnecting from the network, you are getting proper notification, and you can continue working with the app. This means that you implemented it correctly. In addition to the previously listed recommendation, you need to be also familiar with the fact that once you are installing, and let's take as an example Google Maps. Google Maps is also a PWA application. So in most Android applications, Android devices, and most also iOS devices, you'll have the native Maps application, okay? But you will also, once installing the PWA, you have the PWA icon also. So you actually have two apps from the same vendor. One is native and one is progressive, which is web, running side by side. You do want to test for that, both the icons, the functionality, and many more. You also want to check the functionality when PWA works with any of your sensors like location, camera, and other incoming events like calls, text messages, and stuff like that. You also want to see the differences between a native Google Maps that allows you to use Force Touch for like a short menu, which isn't supported obviously on PWA. So you do want to keep testing the different gaps and functionalities in between these two apps as an application vendor. From a test automation perspective, Appium now supports the testing of PWA application, but you need to take care mostly on the launching of the application, working with the objects, and obviously closing the driver. So you can use a launching command like PWA start. You can switch context from native to web and then start working with the objects on the PWA application. But basically, if you are familiar with Appium today, you just need to take care of the different contexts and launching the right application with the application name, of course, in Perfecto, under the developers website, you can find some code samples, and also in Git, there are some code samples on how to automate using Appium your PWA applications. So in this short tech talk, we talked a bit about the reasoning behind switching to PWA, a bit about the architecture on how PWA apps are built, and some guidelines on how to properly build a test strategy for your PWA across both web and mobile. Note, note that PWA is still growing, but most of the browsers are already supporting that. All of the latest iOS and Android operating systems are fully supporting these capabilities and still adding more to that. So you want to follow up and see what is being added into this technology. There are some nice references, mostly from Google, but also some W3C service worker guidelines for implementation. You have a full YouTube course just for PWA that you can follow. You have the local inspector from Chrome that you can use and debug your service workers. So there is content out there. If you are looking to expand your digital reach and your end user experience, consider switching from responsive to progressive. Perfecto can obviously help you do testing on both the website and the mobile side of this progressive web in our cloud. So feel free to reach out to us regarding any questions that you might have. Thank you for being with us in this tech talk. Feel free to visit perfecto.io and follow us to learn even more. Thank you so much.